Let's go into the invoice type form and check it out. Quick rundown on the fields. I'm just going to tab through them. So I'm going to put my cursor on the first tab. Notice we have the drop down of the customers. That's who we're going to be charging for the work that we are doing. Remembering that this would be classically used an invoice in something like a job cost system. If you're a bookkeeper, if you're a law firm, or something like that, or in this case, a landscaper, in which case that industry is one in which you just basically have to do the work first. You can't just choose, in other words, to say, hey, look, I don't want to be on an accrual basis. I want to be on a cash basis. That doesn't work if you're in an industry that happens to need to track accounts receivable, because that's going to force you to be on an accrual basis, as we see here with our landscaping business. So we would put in the customer. The invoice is a form that we would want to be giving to external users, remembering that the forms themselves do not necessarily mean things that we're going to print out or things that we're going to email all the time to other people. They're the data input forms. They're the things that are going to make the data input as easy as possible for us to then use them to enter and create the journal entry that will impact the financial statements, balance sheet, and income statement. But some forms will be documents that we're going to give externally, as is the invoice here. Therefore, it's one of those forms that you might want to customize just to get the look and feel of it look nice, put your logo on it and all that kind of stuff, which we talk about, I believe, in another course or section. We're going to focus on the data input and the journal entry here. So we've got the billing address. If we need to send out the invoice, that becomes particularly important, but oftentimes these days might not be as important because we can just basically email it possibly. We've got the terms. Now we saw the terms on the bills because the bills are related to the accounts payable. This is related to the accounts receivable, but the terms are most likely more useful for an invoice because on the accounts payable side, the terms are going to be on the bill, meaning I'm not going to really put the term which will tell me when something is due from the date I enter a bill, because it's going to be, I'm just going to have to enter the due date of the bill oftentimes. But with the invoice, we are creating the terms. So we're saying, hey, look, I'm going to enter the invoice as of, in this case, 1/6. And if I say it's net 30, that means that we expect to be paid within 30 days. That's going to be important when I sort the accounts receivable so that I can sort by the accounts receivable that has been paid, the accounts receivable that has not been paid but possibly isn't still due, and the accounts receivable that are overdue, possibly sorting in those formats and then sending out notices to say, hey, look, could you guys pay us over here on the accounts receivable? So we can add terms if we need to as well. Then we've got the invoice date, which most likely is the date that you're entering the invoice most of the time. And that means that the due date should populate fairly nice and easy because it's just going to be according to the terms. If the terms are 30 days, it's going to give you the end date automatically 30 days later. Tags are going to be a special tracking function, and we talk about them in another course or section. It's kind of a specialized area that could have multiple different uses. The products and services. These are the things that we are actually selling. So if it was a product, they're invoicing. They are items that we would have to set up, inventory items, which if we're doing inventory, we have to remember, are we tracking the inventory physically in QuickBooks using a perpetual inventory system, or are we not using a perpetual inventory system? And then if we're using a service business, then we're going to have the service item in here, such as if it was a guitar, a auto repair shop, we might have oil change and rotating the tires and so on and so forth. Noting that if you're in a law firm or bookkeeping establishment, you might just have hourly items as your service, and then you're going to put the quantity of hours charging at an hourly rate. However, I would highly suggest thinking about is there a better way to do it, right? Is there a better way to do than hourly service? Because I think in a lot of cases, people appreciate if they can have something more tangible than just the hours that you put in. So for example, for bookkeeping, I would highly suggest that you might want to think about billing based on maybe the number of transactions that you enter. So if I enter more than so many transactions, I can actually print out and count the transactions and see them, or how many accounts are affected, and so on. If you're a law firm or a CPA firm, you might actually charge just a standard rate, and then you might have more or less law services, but you're going to, during a period, but you're going to charge a fixed rate to have them covered, kind of like insurance. And some law firms might do that kind of system. But if you're picking up case-by-case situations in a law firm, or you're working with the IRS or something, you have no idea how long it's going to take. The only way you can really do it is kind of hourly at that point. So then we would enter the hours here. We can add lines. We can clear the lines. We can message on the invoice if we want to add something to the invoice. We have the message on the statement. We can put attachments in place. We can cancel, clear, print, or preview. We can make it reoccurring. This might be useful if we had something such as a prepayment situation. In those situations like the newspaper, or most likely these days applications where we get the money before we actually do the work, we might then put them in place as a prepayment, and then possibly make reoccurring invoices that will record the revenue as we earn it, as time passes, as they have use of the applications or the newspaper hits their window. That's kind of a specialized area. We have the customize situation. This is a form that is subject to customization because, again, you're giving it externally. So you might want to put the logo on it and that kind of stuff. We could save it, and then we can save and send, save and close, and so on. This is going to be the totals. We'll get into the calculation here, but just note for now that you're going to have the total of how much we charge, and then we're also going to have to deal with the idea of taxes, sales tax in the United States, which is a type of consumption tax, and that will complicate the journal entry.